I suppose if you're hearing this, then you'll know I didn't make it out. Truth is, I don't know what I expected. Poking around where the government told us not to. Maybe I thought I'd find nothing but dust and bad air, prove the rumors false, and go back to drinking my evenings away like everyone else in town. But I was raised in these mountains, raised by men who dug their bread from the belly of the earth, and I've never been one to let a locked gate stop me. The year was 1943, and most of the boys I grew up with were overseas. The war had swallowed them whole: France, the Pacific, places we'd only seen on maps at school. Me, I'd been turned away by the army after a mining collapse busted my leg up when I was 17. Doc said I'd limp the rest of my life, and he was right. So while the others fought Hitler, I stayed behind in McDowell County, West Virginia, patching machinery and drinking away my bitterness. Now, there'd been mines all up and down these ridges since before my daddy's daddy was born. Coal ran under this place like veins of black blood. But the one on Black Hollow Mountain, folks called it Number 6 Shaft, had been sealed up long before the war. Collapse, methane pockets. Some say it was a fire. The company put up steel gates, welded shut, and the mountain was left to rot. At least until Uncle Sam came calling. I remember clear as day when the convoys rolled in. Jeeps, trucks loaded with equipment, men in uniforms but without insignia. They strung barbed wire around the old Number 6 and set up floodlights so bright you could see the mountain glowing at night like a lantern. Nobody told us what they were doing, but folks talked plenty. Some said they were hiding munitions. Others whispered about atom tests, though I didn't even know what an atom was supposed to be. I worked at the machine shop down in Welch back then, patching gearboxes and welding parts for the mines still running. Nights, I'd limp home past the tavern and hear men muttering over their whiskey. The talk was always the same. Animals going missing in the holler. Strange humming coming from the mountain, like a hive of angry bees trapped under stone. One old-timer swore he saw light shining through cracks in the rock, green as foxfire. I laughed it off, same as the rest, until I started noticing things myself. The first was the air. Used to be, when I was a boy, Black Hollow smelled of pine and damp moss. But after the soldiers moved in, there was a sourness on the breeze, metallic, like the taste of blood when you bite your tongue. It clung to your clothes, got in your mouth. Then came the animals. My neighbor's coon hounds went yelping into the trees one night and never came back. Chickens wouldn't roost near the mountain anymore, and even the crows avoided it, circling wide overhead. But the worst was the ground. At night, when everything was quiet, you could feel it trembling under your feet. Not like the rumble of blasting powder or the far-off echo of dynamite. This was subtler, steadier, like something shifting deep down in the mountain's gut. It got so I couldn't sleep for thinking about it. I'd sit by my window at night, smoking cigarette after cigarette, watching that damned mountain glow under the floodlights. And I'd wonder, what the hell were they doing down there? That's how it started, with a restless fool who couldn't keep his nose out of places it didn't belong. Looking back now, I think the mountain was already awake, waiting for us to come scratching at its belly. And we, me and the others, well, we were the sparks that lit the fuse. It was Caleb that finally talked me into it. Caleb Price had been a buddy of mine since we were boys. He was wiry, mean when he drank too much, but stubborn as hell. The army had taken him for a few months before spitting him back out with a busted eardrum. Artillery had blown it out in training. Left him deaf on one side and bitter as sin. He was the kind of man who couldn't stand not knowing what someone else was hiding. "You seen the trucks?" he asked me one night at the tavern. His breath reeked of sour mash, his fingers yellow from rolling his own smokes. I nodded. "I seen 'em. They ain't hauling coal," he said. "Ain't hauling munitions neither. I know a powder truck when I see one. These are different. Saw crates marked with them radiation signs. You know what that means?" "No," I said, because I truly didn't. Caleb leaned closer. "It means they're cooking something down there, and I aim to find out what." I should have walked away right then. Should have left him to stew in his liquor. But something in his voice, something wild and certain, took root in me. By the end of the week, there were 4 of us willing to go. Me, Caleb, his cousin Roy, and a boy named Henry Talbot, who worked at the rail yard. Roy was built like an ox, strong from hauling timber. Henry was younger than the rest of us, 17, maybe 18, but hungry for trouble. His brother had shipped off to Italy, and he wanted to prove himself. We were fools, all of us. But back then it felt like bravery. We planned it for a Sunday night, when the soldiers drank themselves stupid in Welch. The 4 of us crept up the mountain through the laurel thickets, skirting past the wire fence. I remember the way the floodlights burned against the fog, making the trees throw long, ghostly shadows. The gate over the number 6 shaft was a slab of welded steel, thick enough to stop a truck. But the soldiers had left a smaller service hatch at the side, locked with nothing but a chain and pad. Caleb had borrowed a set of bolt cutters from the yard. The sound of that chain snapping echoed through the hollow like a rifle crack. My heart hammered so loud, I thought for sure a guard would come running. But the night stayed still, save for the steady humming beneath the ground. Inside was a darkness thicker than pitch. The old rail tracks ran down into it, swallowed by shadow. We lit our lamps, carbide lanterns stolen from the machine shop, and the walls came alive with dripping moisture, black stone slick with years of condensation. The smell hit us hard, rot, sulfur, and something else beneath it all. Sharp and coppery. We moved single file, boots crunching on gravel. The deeper we went, the warmer it got, like walking into the breath of some great beast. The walls began to change, too. At first it was just discoloration, streaks of black fused into the coal. Then came the marks, burns in the rock, shapes too deliberate to be accidents. Spirals, jagged symbols, patterns that made my stomach twist just to look at them. "Hell is this?" Henry whispered, running his hand across one of the scorched spirals. "Not coal fire," Roy muttered. "Rock don't melt like that." None of us answered. The silence pressed in, broken only by the hiss of our lamps and the occasional drip of water. We found the first body not long after, or what was left of it. It lay half buried in rubble, the uniform shredded, helmet melted to the skull like wax on a candle. Bones were blackened, twisted, as though fire had eaten him from the inside out. The worst part was the face, what was left of it frozen in a scream, mouth fused open, teeth bared. Henry gagged, turned, and vomited against the wall. Caleb just stared, eyes hard, jaw clenched. "They're covering up something," he said at last, his voice low. "Something they made." We pressed on, though every part of me screamed to turn back. The air grew hotter, heavier, until it was like breathing through a wet rag. Our lamps flickered, shadows crawling along the walls like living things. The steel door wasn't like anything I'd ever seen in a coal shaft. It looked more like something from a battleship, heavy and riveted, with a wheel lock in the center. Faded letters were stenciled across it, most too scraped up to read, though I caught the word caution and a symbol like a black sun half buried in flame. The humming was stronger there, a constant thrum that rattled my teeth. I swear the air felt alive, pulsing against my skin. Caleb spat on the ground. They're hiding it in here, whatever the hell it is. Henry shook his head furiously. We can't. Jesus, Caleb, we ain't supposed to be here. Look at what it did to that soldier. We need to go. But Caleb was already at the wheel, straining against the rusted lock. His face was red, sweat rolling down his temples. With a groan of metal, the seal cracked open. The breath that rushed out nearly dropped me to my knees. It was hot, foul, and thick, with a copper stink of blood. My lamp flickered, sputtered. Behind us, Henry started sobbing. Then we heard boots. The sound echoed sharp against the stone, coming fast from deeper in the tunnel. Lamps bobbed into view, half a dozen soldiers in fatigues, rifles at the ready. Their faces were pale, drawn tight with fear. Not anger, not even authority. Fear. Back from the door, one of them barked. His voice cracked. He wasn't used to shouting orders. You don't know what you're doing. Caleb raised his hand slowly, but his grin never left. What's in there? He asked. What the hell are you boys cooking down here? The lead soldier didn't answer. His eyes darted past us to the crack in the door. His lips moved, whispering something I couldn't hear. A prayer, maybe. And then, something inside answered. The door groaned and shivered as though whatever lay beyond it was straining, testing its prison. The humming, that awful pulse in the stone, grew louder, filling the tunnel until my teeth rattled and my head throbbed. Shadows twisted along the walls, coiling like serpents, and I could swear they were moving independently of our lamps. Then the green light broke through. Not a flood, not a glow, but something alive, crawling and shimmering. The air itself warped around it, heat pressing down on us like a weight, suffocating and sweet with the metallic tang of blood. One soldier screamed and fired his rifle into the door. Bullets pinged off the steel with sparks. Then, in a blink, the door bent inward as though it were paper. I heard a sickening, wet crack as something pressed against it. Limbs, too many to count, pushed, pulled, and writhed through the gap. Faces formed where they shouldn't, twisted in agony, eyes staring at us like burning coals. Henry froze, choking on his own breath. It's alive, he whispered, voice trembling. I wanted to tell him to run. I wanted to tell myself the same. But movement had already begun, bodies colliding with stone, metal, each other. One soldier tried to swing a rifle like a club. The creature caught it in a flash of movement, bending it in a way that should have shattered steel, then thrust the butt into his chest. He collapsed, coughing blood that hissed where it hit the floor. Caleb grabbed my arm. We have to go, he yelled. But the air was thick, each step a battle against some unseen pressure, as if the mountain itself had grown arms to slow us. We backed up into a side tunnel. Shadows stretched impossibly long, and the creature's form followed us, sliding and reshaping with every step. The whispers grew louder, voices overlapping until the sound became a physical assault on the mind. You didn't hear it. You felt it in your bones and your stomach. Then the first explosion of gore hit. A soldier who'd tripped over rails tumbled forward just as the thing surged into the chamber. His body was caught between two of its limbs, twisted in impossible angles. I saw his skin split along the back of his neck, muscle tearing, ribs popping, before the mass swallowed him in a grotesque gulp. His scream lingered in the air long after his body was gone. We ran further. Rocks and debris fell around us as the mountain seemed to quake with anger. Caleb's lantern flickered, casting everything in jagged green shadows. Another soldier, one who had stayed behind to fire his rifle, was caught in the doorway, the thing wrapping him in limbs that moved like liquid. He struggled, flailing, before being lifted into the green light. I saw half his face dissolve under some unseen fire, flesh melting and reforming before it disappeared entirely. I couldn't look away, though I wanted to vomit. Henry screamed again and bolted. I chased after him, calling his name, but he vanished into the dark junctions of the tunnels. We stumbled through tight passages, breathing hot, wet air. Every sound, the creak of timber, the drip of water, the hum of electricity from abandoned equipment, felt amplified, like the mountain was alive and mocking us. Caleb found another door, smaller, bolted but not as strong. He threw it open, and we ducked inside. For a moment, we were silent, listening. Only the whispers remained, circling, coiling around us. The green light seeped through the cracks, painting our hands and faces in horror. "We can't keep running," Caleb muttered. "We need to find a way to stop it. There's dynamite in the chamber further back. If we—" A shriek cut him off. Something slammed into the door, rattling the wood, making the room tremble. We pressed our backs against the wall as it hammered, limbs slapping against stone with wet, sticky sounds. The whispering rose to a roar in my skull. The first touch was Henry's scream, echoing faintly through the walls. Then came the sound of tearing cloth and flesh, someone, somewhere, being claimed. Caleb grabbed me, pulling me through the hidden passages, twisting through narrow crawl spaces until my lungs burned. Every step was a battle. Our lamps flickered against slick rock, revealing glimpses of shapes with too many arms, too many eyes, mouths opening in silent screams. Occasionally, we stumbled across what remained of those the thing had taken, smoky, blackened bones, half-melted bodies fused with rock and debris. The smell of charred flesh and copper burned in my nostrils. And through it all, the whispers never stopped. They spoke to me directly at last, a cold, bone-deep certainty that we weren't meant to survive. I could feel it crawling inside, in the marrow of my legs, the cords of my throat. There was no time to run, only the dreadful awareness that the thing was patient. It could wait, it could watch, and I could never escape. The tunnel twisted ahead of us, rails bent, timber beams sagging where the rock had shifted. Caleb's lamp swung wildly in his hand as we ran, shadows leaping like demons across the walls. Behind us, the thing crawled and heaved, its chorus of voices filling the shaft with whispers that weren't meant for human ears. "Don't stop," Caleb gasped, clutching my arm to keep me moving. My bad leg screamed with every step, the old break in the bone grinding. I could feel my strength leaking away. But the thought of that thing behind us was worse than death. We caught up to Henry at a junction where the tunnel forked. He was crouched against the wall, his lamp smashed, eyes rolling white in his skull. His fingernails were bloody where he'd clawed at his ears, trying to tear the whispers out. "Get up, boy," Caleb shouted, grabbing him by the collar. "We ain't dead yet." But Henry just shook his head, lips trembling. "It's in me," he whispered. "It's already in me." And then, before we could stop him, he slammed his forehead against the rock. Once, twice. The third time split him open. He slid down the wall, twitching, his blood steaming in that sick green glow. Caleb cursed, dragging me onward. I wanted to stop, wanted to drag Henry's body with us. But the thing was coming. I could hear it. The scrape of claws, the wet slap of flesh, the endless whispering. We reached a chamber where the government had set up equipment, generators, crates, metal drums stamped with hazard signs. Some were cracked open, leaking thick black sludge that hissed when it touched the stone. The whole place smelled like a foundry, burning metal and ozone. Caleb stopped, eyes wide. "Dynamite," he muttered, spotting a crate of blasting charges stacked against the wall. "We can bring the whole tunnel down, trap it inside." He looked at me then, wild grins splitting his soot-streaked face. "We can end this." I wanted to believe him. God help me, I did. But as he fumbled with the charges, I saw something behind him. A shadow moving against the glow. The thing poured into the chamber like a tide. Its limbs scraped along the ceiling, faces bubbling and sliding across its surface, mouths opening in silent screams. The whispers rose to a howl, rattling my skull. Caleb lit a fuse with shaking hands, shoving the bundle of dynamite into a drum-leaking sludge. "Run!" he screamed, grabbing me by the shirt. "Run, or we're meat." I stumbled with him, my leg giving out as we scrambled toward the far shaft. Behind me, the blast ripped the mountain apart. A thunderclap of fire and stone roared through the shaft, the heat searing my back. The ground lurched, ceiling cracking, timbers splintering. I thought it was over. I thought Caleb had done it. But then, through the ringing in my ears, I heard it. The whispers, faint at first, then louder, echoing through the shattered stone. I raised my head, my last lamp flickering weakly. The dust cleared just enough for me to see. The thing was still there. Pieces of it smoldered, dripping, reforming even as I watched. Faces twisted in agony surfaced from its flesh, Caleb's among them now. His eyes blinked, mouth opening in a soundless scream before sinking back beneath the tide. My lamp gave one last sputter and died. In that final darkness, the whispers rushed in, cold and endless, filling every part of me. I tried to crawl, but the ground itself seemed to hold me down. Something wet and burning wrapped around my leg, dragging me back. I didn't scream. Not until I felt the hands, dozens of them, closing around me, pulling me into the heat and the light. And by then, the mountain had already swallowed me whole.